Yo, what's up, guys? It's Andrew from travelingguitarist.com. Today I'm talking to you about the differences between a bass guitar compressor and a guitar pedal compressor. In the article, so I just kind of run through the parameters of a compressor, explain its functions, and to answer the question succinctly, you can use a regular guitar compressor for a bass guitar. It's not optimal, but it's going to work fine. For instance, you can use a guitar pedal compressor from MXR or Boss or something like that for a bass guitar. It's totally fine. Also, when it comes to a rack unit, for instance, the Universal Audio LA2A, something like that, that can be used for any type of audio signal, and it commonly is used for any type of audio signal. So while you could definitely buy a pedal, however, that's meant primarily for the bass guitar, you don't have to. Is it better to? Yeah, you could probably buy some good models out there, but you don't really need to. But anyway, as I wrote about in the article, I said it right here. I said a compressor isn't specific to any kind of instrument, so it will work with many different types, including guitar, bass, vocals, whatever you want. There's no reason why you wouldn't be able to use a compressor pedal for a bass guitar because it's essentially performing the same function regardless of the instrument. So that's pretty much the answer to the question right there. We're just going to talk about a few more things, including like what you would use a compressor for the bass guitar for, as well as just some of the other little tips and tricks and miscellaneous things that I think are worth mentioning. So at the article at travelingguitarist.com, which I'll put in the link in the video description, you can check out I give an explanation of what the purpose of a compressor is, and I offer up these images that kind of give you an idea of what a compressed and uncompressed file look like in the DAW in WAV format. I also run through the parameters. I think I do a really good job of explaining these things. Moving on from that, using a compressor for a bass guitar, it's super useful for pretty much every instrument. It's one of the most commonly used audio processors, and for a good reason. It's because it accentuates the quiet sounds and it minimizes the loud sounds. And that's why in this image you can kind of see this is the uncompressed file and this is a compressed file. So you can see that it has brought everything up because I added quite a bit of gain to the compressor, so it's made the files actually louder and bigger. But you can see that it's kind of increased these quiet sounds in addition to the loud sounds. But ultimately, it's kind of like squeezed everything together. So this is useful, and the reason why is because let's say, for example, you're playing the bass guitar, and some of the notes that you've played you didn't play them with the proper attack, or in other words, you didn't play them strong enough. You didn't hit the note hard enough. You didn't fret it hard enough. You didn't pick it hard enough. However you played it. The compressor will increase that sound and kind of equalize it in comparison with the notes that you did play louder. So that's why it's super useful. And also you can use it to kind of rein in the muddy and messy frequencies. It can like squeeze those frequencies together and kind of create more space in the frequency spectrum. In other words, the bass guitar tends to be very, very high and low frequencies, and it's wide. It's like a wide audio. Like if you check it out on a frequency spectrum, so for instance in GarageBand in the channel EQ, you'll see the bass. It's much wider than the guitar. The guitar tends to focus in between 1,000 and I would say maybe 500 hertz and 5,000 kilohertz up to the higher range a little bit more. And the bass is kind of more spread out among the lower frequencies. Well, the compressor is just gonna rein in some of those low frequencies and maybe clean up the mud and just make a more punchy and distinguished, defined sound. So that's what it's good for. What's another thing that I should be mentioning here? Using the example of slurs, this is a good example. This also applies to the guitar as well. If you're using a lot of slurs, hammer-ons, and pull-offs, a compressor is really useful for bringing those notes forward. It's really useful for accentuating those notes and getting them to be equal in volume to notes that you've actually picked. With that said, it's also going to pick up on an extraneous string noise. However, that's just something that you're going to have to deal with. In this subheading right here, tricks and tips for the bass guitarist, I mentioned that you want your uncompressed sound to be similar in volume or the same in volume to the compressed sound. So that means on your volume knob, you want to make sure that the output is set in such a way where when you turn it on and off, it's not going to affect the volume you know, you're not going to get a significant boost in volume all of a sudden when you're playing, because you know, if you're playing a live show, or even if you're just playing in your room, it's going to be undesirable. You know, you want it to be the same volume regardless of what pedals you have turned on. Ultimately, from what I understand, I had to do a bit of research on this, but there are some differences between a bass guitar and a six-string guitar compressor. For instance, I think many bass guitar compressors, they have a much slower attack. And the reason for that is that it's going to allow for the initial punch or attack of the plucked note to kind of shine through the mix. And also, in comparison to the guitar compressor, the bass guitar is slower attack. That means the guitar compressor is going to be a faster attack. And I also read this online. I'm not sure if it's 100% correct, but apparently bass guitar compressors using a light emitting diode or a light dependent resistor rather than a transistor, which I guess guitar compressors do use. So I read online that these LED, LDE are diodes, or whatever they're called. Yeah, they allow for the compressor to function a bit more smoothly. So all in all, you know, you probably could buy a bass guitar compressor instead of a guitar compressor. If you have the extra cash, I don't really see the issue with doing so. However, you don't necessarily need to. It's not 100% needed. So yeah, I mean, that's it. In terms of what you should buy, I'm not going to tell you that. I don't know enough about bass guitar compressors and guitar pedal compressors to give you an informed opinion on what one you should buy. But I'm sure you could find some other information online that will tell you a great one to get. Typically, I would say, however, that getting an MXR one is probably going to do you well. I have an MXR channel EQ, and it's great. So I imagine that their compressors are just as good. You could probably check the reviews for them online, and you would be able to get a more informed opinion on it. But anyway, that's all for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, peace.